"You won't be needed at the wedding," she said, voice soft as lace, words sharp as glass. The call came right before sunset, when the kitchen light turned everything gold except me. I had the phone between shoulder and cheek, hands still wet from washing the same dishes I'd been washing since I was 16. Dishes from a home I built, a family I fed, and a love I thought would never rot. My son's fiancée, Lena, said it like she was reading off a grocery list. Small ceremony. Family only. Family only. The words sat on the counter between my fingers and the sponge, heavy, ugly, pretending to be polite. I heard laughter behind her, champagne glasses clinking, somebody's playlist humming about forever. Forever, my foot. I wiped my hands slow. "Well, baby," I said, "I thought I was family." Silence. A single breath on the other end. Then, "Of course you are, Miss Price. But you know how stressful weddings can be. We're just keeping it simple." She said Miss Price, not Mama, not even Helen. Formality. The sharpest kind of disrespect. And in that silence, I could hear the lie breathing, because I'd seen that ring before. The one she was probably twirling on her finger as she spoke. My mother's ring. Gold worn soft from decades of prayer and hard work. The same ring I kept locked away after Mama passed, saying I'd only give it to the woman who treated my son like he was more than potential. I'd planned to pass it down on their real wedding day, not this performance behind my back. But somehow it was gone, and now she was wearing it. The line went quiet, but the ache didn't. It crawled up my arm like ice. I could hear my own heart saying, "Don't you dare cry, Helen. Don't give them the show they want." So I smiled, not because I felt peace, but because I'd learned how to weaponize it. "Congratulations, baby," I said. "Y'all have a beautiful day." Then I hung up, turned off the faucet, and stood there until the sun slid away. That night, I went to the cedar box under my bed, the one with my wedding veil, my husband's service pin, and Mama's old Bible. The ring box was open, empty, no note, no explanation, just the ghost of a promise that used to mean something. I sat on the floor, cross-legged like a little girl again, and the memory came back. Mama slipping that ring off her finger on her deathbed. "Don't let the next woman wear this unless she's worthy," she whispered. "Some things don't belong to pretty hands, baby. They belong to praying ones." And I, fool that I was, thought I'd kept that promise. But love can make a thief out of hope. The next morning, I saw the photos online. White dress, ivory smile, and right there, on her hand, my mother's ring, flashing under the camera like it belonged. The caption read, "Mr. and Mrs. Carter. Finally, forever, forever. Again." The comments rolled in. "Beautiful bride. God bless the new family." But God wasn't tagged. I scrolled past the likes till my fingers trembled. Then I saw my son's face. He wasn't smiling. His eyes, those same deep brown eyes that used to find me in every school crowd, were tired, half hidden behind the bride's hand on his chest. I zoomed in. My heart stopped. On his wrist, my husband's old watch, the one I'd given him for when you make your own family. And now that family had erased me. Later that week, the mail brought a return address I recognized, Mr. and Mrs. Carter. Inside was a wedding photo, glossy and smug. No note, just a picture of them under a white arch. But in the background, barely visible, I saw my sister, Dolores, standing behind the guests, looking guilty. She knew, she always did. So I called her. "Dolores, you went?" "Helen, listen." "No, you listen. You stood there and watched my son get married without me? You watched her wear Mama's ring? I didn't know she'd do that. I thought you said you couldn't come." I laughed, cold. I said I hadn't been invited. There's a difference. Dolores sighed. "You always make things dramatic." I said nothing, because silence makes cowards talk. She kept going, nervous. "They wanted to keep it simple. You know how young folks are. It's not about you." That line, It's not about you. Hit like a slap made of silk. And just like that, I saw everything clear. It wasn't just a mistake. It was a decision, a removal. They'd wanted me gone so their story could start clean. But what they didn't know was that my story wasn't over. That night, I opened a notebook. On the first page, I wrote the date of the wedding. On the second, I wrote 2 names, Lena Carter and Michael Carter, my son. Then beneath it, a single line. They buried me alive in silence. Now I'll resurrect in truth. I tore the next 20 pages out for evidence. Because if they thought the ring was all they stole, they didn't know Helen Price. The next Sunday, I went to church, sat in the same pew I always did. Pastor Green gave his usual sermon on forgiveness, but my mind wasn't in heaven. It was at that altar. And when the choir sang, "What a friend we have in Jesus," I felt Mama's voice in my ear, low, stern, and certain. "Baby, forgiveness don't mean foolishness. You can love from afar and still fight back." So I smiled, closed my eyes, and whispered, "Amen." But inside, something woke up, something that had been quiet too long. Over the next few days, I went through my old documents, property deeds, bank statements, insurance papers. Turns out, I still owned the little lot behind the old Price family home. The same land where my late husband had built the garden shed. The same shed where I used to store Mama's things. If that ring came from there, then somebody had been inside. I checked the lock. Scratches around the keyhole. And that's when I knew. Somebody had a copy of my key. That night, I found the old security camera I'd bought years ago but never used. I set it up near the window, pointed toward the shed. Because if they'd been bold enough once, they'd be bold again. And I didn't need to raise my voice, I just needed proof. Because proof speaks louder than pride. At midnight, I heard the faint crunch of gravel outside. A flashlight flickered. Voices. Low, hurried, familiar. I pressed record on my phone, heart steady. Then I heard it. "Just grab the rest of it and go," a man's voice whispered. "Your mama won't notice." It was my son. And just like that, all the warmth left the room. I didn't go outside. Not yet. I let them take what they came for, because sometimes the only way to catch a thief is to let them steal twice. When they left, I walked out in my robe and slippers, moonlight on my face, peace in my hands. I opened the shed. Empty boxes, torn fabric, dust. But I wasn't angry. I was ready. Because I finally understood what Mama meant. Some things don't belong to pretty hands. They belong to praying ones. And this story, my story, was just getting started. The next morning, I woke up before dawn. The air was heavy with dew, the kind that turns every blade of grass into glass. I sat on the porch with a cup of chicory coffee and the truth humming in my chest. They'd come into my shed, my son, his new wife, like thieves moving through the bones of a woman who once fed them. The ring was gone. The old letters, too, ones I wrote to his father during deployment, and my mother's lace gloves, the ones she wore at her own wedding, gone. But baby, I wasn't weeping anymore. Something colder had taken root. Not rage, not grief, clarity. Because betrayal, when it's this personal, burns so hot it purifies. At 7:02 a.m., I drove into town in my blue Buick, the one the grandkids called Heaven's Chariot. Stopped by Mason's Hardware, bought a new deadbolt, a chain lock, and a motion camera with night vision. The clerk, young boy with freckles and faith in his voice, said, "You okay, Miss Helen?" I smiled, tight but kind. "Just keeping an eye on what's mine, baby." He nodded, not understanding. But that's all right. Understanding ain't required when you're fighting spiritual battles. Back home, I bolted the shed door twice, then opened my notebook again. New page, new title. The wedding job. Under it, I wrote 3 questions in blue ink. 1. Who had my key? 2. Why take the letters? 3. What else did they plan to erase? Because this wasn't just about jewelry anymore. This was about rewriting history. And if I've learned anything from a lifetime of surviving soft-spoken betrayal, it's that people erase you first on paper, then in memory. 2 days later, my neighbor Mr. Jenkins knocked on my door. Old man, 75, cane in hand, eyes full of gossip and guilt. "Heard about the wedding," he said, eyes shifting. "You okay, Miss Helen?" I gave him my church smile. "Child, I'm blessed and busy." But he leaned closer, lowered his voice. "Well, I saw something that might concern you." He pulled a folded paper from his coat pocket, an invoice for jewelry cleaning from Eleanor's boutique downtown, addressed to Mrs. Lena Carter. Item description: antique heirloom ring, gold 1930s vintage, resized and polished. That was Mama's ring. I took the paper slow, like it might explode. "Thank you, James," I said softly. "Don't mention it," he murmured. "Just didn't seem right." Didn't seem right. Those 3 words could summarize my whole life some days. I drove to Eleanor's after church. The shop bell rang when I walked in, tinkling like gossip. Eleanor herself looked up from behind the counter, her lipstick a little too red for Sunday. "Well, Miss Helen Price, haven't seen you in years." I smiled politely. "I'm just looking for something precious that went missing." "Oh?" she said, already nervous. "An old ring, gold, engraved inside, 'To Ruth, love eternal.' You remember it?" She blinked, fidgeted with her necklace. "That ring's already been claimed. The young lady said it was her grandmother's." I tilted my head, voice steady as thunder before rain. "Did she say which grandmother, baby?" Silence. She didn't answer. But guilt has a sound, and I heard it loud. Back home, I sat by the window, notebook open. I wrote, "They're rewriting bloodlines now." Then I stared at the page until the ink dried into anger. Because that's what Lena was after. Legitimacy. If she could convince the world that ring was hers, that story became hers too. And my son, poor boy, was just the pen she used to sign the lie. That evening, a text came from him. "Michael, hey Ma, hope you're doing okay. Sorry you couldn't come to the ceremony. Lena's still upset. Maybe we can stop by next week?" I stared at the screen for a long time, then typed back, "I'm fine, baby. Y'all come on Sunday. Bring the truth with you." He read it. No reply, but the little scene icon might as well have been a confession. That night, I set a second camera in the living room hidden behind the curtains. I cleaned the house, lit a candle, and prayed not for revenge, but for revelation. Because when truth comes home, baby, it don't knock. It kicks the door open. Sunday came with rain, soft at first, like forgiveness testing the air, then harder, like God clapping once, warning everybody to get right. They arrived at noon. He wore a gray suit. She wore guilt disguised as confidence. When I opened the door, I saw that ring sparkle again. Brighter now, crueler somehow. "Mama," Michael said, kissing my cheek, "you look good." "Thank you. Baby," I said, eyes never leaving Lena's hand. "Congratulations to y'all both." She smiled, tight. "Thank you, Miss Price. We wanted to stop by, show you the photos." She slid her phone across the table like a peace offering. The images flipped by, wedding arch, cake, kisses, rings, and I let her talk. About love, about new beginnings, about family unity. Then I said softly, "That ring looks familiar, baby. Where'd you get it?" Her smile faltered, just a flicker. "Oh, this? Family heirloom, my grandmother's." I said slow. "Funny. I don't remember your grandmother ever working my land or sharing my bloodline." The silence in that room thickened till even the clock refused to tick. Michael looked between us, confused. "Ma, please don't." But I wasn't raising my voice. I was raising evidence. I slid the boutique invoice across the table. "Tell me again, baby," I said, voice calm as scripture. "Whose ring is that?" Her face drained like paint in rain. Michael stared at the paper, then at me. "Where'd you get this?" "Truth always finds its way home," I said. The storm outside cracked right on cue, thunder rolling like applause. Lena stood up, trembling, her mask slipping. "You're making this dramatic." "No," I whispered. "I'm making it documented." I turned the camera on my phone toward her, record light blinking red. "Smile for the truth, baby." She froze. Michael's voice broke. "Mama, stop recording." But I didn't stop, because sometimes the only way to heal a family wound is to show it light. They left without a word, slamming the door behind them. The candle on the table flickered out, smoke curling like a spirit rising, and I sat there steady, unblinking, whispering into the quiet. Kindness ain't weakness. It's just quiet until it strikes. Then I picked up my pen. On the next page, I wrote, Stage 2, Exposure. Because this wasn't revenge. This was revelation, and baby, the storm had just begun. I didn't sleep that night. The thunder rolled off and on like heaven pacing the floor. Outside, the rain had washed the world clean, but not me. I sat at the kitchen table in my robe, the house dim except for one lamp and one thought. If she could lie about the ring, what else had she lied about? Because liars don't just tell stories. They build houses out of them, and my son had moved right in. By Monday morning, the video from my camera had finished uploading. I played it back, frame by frame, their shadows moving through the yard, whispering, nervous. Then something hit me like a nail through silk. Lena wasn't just holding a flashlight, she was holding a key. That's how she got in. And when I zoomed in closer, I saw something shine on her wrist, a charm bracelet. Not just any charm, a tiny gold cross I hadn't seen in 10 years, because it used to hang from my mother's Bible. Now I was done watching. I was documenting. Tuesday morning, I drove straight to First Parish Credit Union. Miss Gloria, the teller, smiled when she saw me. "Well, Miss Helen, haven't seen you since your loan renewal last summer." "Mm-hmm," I said, sliding my ID across the counter. "I just need a quick printout of my safety deposit access log." She hesitated. "Of course. Give me one moment." A few clicks later, her smile faded. It looks like someone accessed your box last month." My chest tightened. "Who?" She leaned closer, whispering like guilt was contagious. "It says joint access, authorized by Michael Carter." My son. Now, baby, there's hurt. And then there's holy hurt. The kind that don't make you cry, just makes you still, because that's when the truth don't whisper. It sings. He'd added his name to my deposit box months ago, just in case of emergency. Back then, I thought he was being responsible. Now I saw it was rehearsal. That's where the key must have come from. That's where she got the bracelet. That's where they started their rewriting. When I got back home, I didn't slam doors, didn't throw anything, didn't curse. I cooked. Cooking is my way of talking to God without words. I made oxtails, rice, and cabbage, the kind of meal that used to bring the whole family home on Sundays. And as the smell filled the kitchen, I remembered something Mama said once, back when I was a little girl scraping burnt rice off the pot. When people forget your worth, feed them what they left behind. Let the smell remind them who taught them hunger. So that's what I did. I cooked my grief into memory. That evening, I called the one person who still knew the old ways, Sister Evelyn, our church secretary and unofficial historian. She picked up on the first ring. "Evelyn, I need you to do me a favor," I said. "For you, Helen, anything." "You still keep records from the Price family estate?" She laughed. "Child, I keep everything. Birth certificates, baptism papers, even the deed from your great-granddaddy's farm." "That's the one I need," I said softly. "I think somebody's trying to erase it." When I got there, Evelyn already had a folder waiting, dusty, thick, tied with twine. "These papers prove your line straight back to 1897, she said proudly. "Why you askin', Helen?" I told her everything. Her face dropped. Then her voice went low and sharp like a psalm before battle. "Oh no, baby, they don't get to touch legacy, not while I'm still drawing breath." She tapped the folder. "Take this. Make copies. Keep one here with me. You guard the other like scripture." I hugged her. "You always were my right hand." She smiled. "No, baby, I'm your witness." That night, as I drove home, the rain started again. But this time, I didn't flinch, because storms don't scare you when you realize you are one. Back at home, I spread the papers across the kitchen table. Deeds, signatures, maps. And there it was, clear as daylight. The ring's engraving matched Mama's legal initials, R.E.P., Ruth Elaine Price. That meant one thing. The ring was property, and property, when stolen, ain't just betrayal, it's crime. The next morning, I called the county clerk. "Ma'am," I said, "I'd like to file a record of inheritance for verification. Some family items are being misrepresented." The clerk asked for proof. I gave it to her. Then she asked for motive. I didn't say revenge. I said justice, because justice don't need anger, just paperwork. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived. Official seal, county emblem, subject, unauthorized transfer of heirloom property, status, under review. That was my first small win, but I wasn't celebrating yet. Because that same evening, I got a voicemail. Michael's voice, tight, frustrated. "Mama, we need to talk. Lena's upset. She said you're making calls about us. Please let this go before it gets messy." Messy. That word made me smile. Baby, I was born in messy. I survived it, baptized in it, and now I was about to make it holy. So I left him a message back. "Son, when a thief steals from God's line, the mess don't scare me. It convicts them. We'll talk when you're ready for truth." Then I turned off my phone, lit a candle, and wrote in my notebook under Stage 2, exposure. The ring was never the prize. The truth is. Then below that, one more line, Stage 3, courtroom. Because when lies try to look legitimate, you don't argue, you document. And baby, I was building my sermon, line by line. The next few weeks were quiet. Too quiet, the kind that hums beneath the skin. My phone barely rang. No visits, no, "I love you, Ma." No grandkids running through my kitchen asking for cornbread before dinner. That silence, it was heavy. Like somebody had boarded up my life from the inside. But baby, silence don't scare me. I was raised on it. I used to think isolation was punishment. Now I know it's preparation. When you lose the noise, you start hearing what matters. The clock ticking on my wall sounded like prophecy, the creak of my floorboards, like ancestors pacing, even the refrigerator hum, like a low hymn keeping me company. I spent my days reading Mama's old Bible, underlining verses I used to skip. "The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." Exodus 14:14. That "be still" part used to frustrate me. Now it felt like an instruction, so I stayed still. But my mind worked like thunder under clouds. Then one night, around midnight, I got a message from an unknown number. Unknown? "You think this makes you look holy? You're ruining your son's life." No name, no photo, but I didn't need one. The tone told me who it was. "Lena," I read. It twice, calm as tea cooling on a counter. Then I typed back, "You can't ruin what truth built, baby. You can only delay what's coming." She didn't respond, but I saw the typing bee bubble flicker for a full minute before it disappeared. That's the sound of guilt thinking too long. 2 days later, a white envelope showed up in my mailbox, no return address. Inside, a single photo. It was me sitting in church last Sunday, taken from outside the window. No note, no signature. Just that photo, folded once. They were watching me. I took it straight to Pastor Green. He frowned, hands on his knees like the weight of prayer just doubled. "This ain't just sin," he said. "It's sickness." I nodded. "I don't want revenge, Pastor. I want restoration." He smiled sadly. Then you let God work through paperwork and patience. Keep documenting, Sister Helen. The devil hates receipts. That line stayed with me. The devil hates receipts. So I gathered mine. Invoices, access logs, camera footage, inheritance records, texts, even that photo from my mailbox. I organized it all into one thick folder, labeled Proof for Court. Because forgiveness may save souls, but documentation saves sanity. A week later, I was sweeping my porch when I saw a silver car slow down across the street. Tinted windows. It stopped, idled, then drove off. I didn't panic. I waved. Because fear is what they wanted, and nothing unnerves a coward like a calm woman waving from her own porch. That evening, the phone rang again. Michael this time. I answered on the third ring, steady. "Ma," his voice cracked. "Why are you doing this? Lena's been crying all week." "Crying don't erase theft, baby," he sighed. "You're making it bigger than it needs to be." "I didn't make it big," I said softly. "You made it legal. That's what happens when you take what ain't yours. Ma, please, don't take this to court." I leaned back in my chair, eyes on the fading sun. "Michael, sometimes God don't calm the storm. Sometimes he brings you to it so everybody sees who can swim." He was silent. Then, "I never meant for this to go this far." "Then you shouldn't have given her a key." Click. He hung up. I didn't cry, didn't yell, just sat there till the moonlight made the edges of my coffee cup glow. Then I whispered to the night, "Mama, your ring's coming home, just not the way I thought." The next morning, I met with attorney Mae Washington, the sharpest black woman lawyer this side of Georgia. Small frame, big voice, and a Bible on her desk thicker than any law book. She flipped through my folder with the precision of a surgeon. When she finished, she looked up and said, "Mrs. Price, this isn't just family drama. This is inheritance fraud, intimidation, and unlawful property access. You've got a case." I smiled faintly. "I've got truth, baby. Case just helps it travel." She laughed softly. "You remind me of my grandmother." "Then your grandmother must have had patience and a temper." She grinned. "Both. That's how we win." We filed the papers that Friday. By Monday, they'd been served. And that's when everything changed. Sunday morning, I walked into church and could feel the whispers wrap around me like smoke. Folks pretending to be quiet while saying my name. "You hear Miss Helen suing her own son?" "That's a shame." "Family shouldn't fight over jewelry." They didn't know the story, just the summary. And summaries lie. But I didn't hold it against them, because people love to judge the woman standing in the fire, till it's their house burning next. I sat in the same pew as always, head high, back straight. When the choir started singing "I Won't Complain," I smiled, because I wasn't complaining. I was correcting. After service, Sister Evelyn hugged me tight. "You all right, baby?" "I'm fine," I said. "I'm just letting God use the courtroom as his pulpit." She grinned. "Then preach, Sister Helen." And right then, I knew I wasn't alone. Because when you stand for truth long enough, heaven sends you witnesses. That night, the rain returned. But this time, it didn't sound like mourning. It sounded like applause. Because isolation wasn't the end. It was intermission. And the next act, baby, the next act was about to be justice. I closed my notebook, wrote 3 words in bold, Stage 4, court begins. Then I leaned back, eyes closed, whispering to the quiet house. They took my ring. They stole my peace, but they woke my purpose. And the thunder outside rumbled like it agreed. The courthouse smelled like old paper, disinfectant, and secrets that never stayed buried. I'd been here before. Once for jury duty, once when I fought for my late husband's pension. But this time, baby, I wasn't here as a witness. I was here as a storm in heels and pearls. When I walked in, heads turned. Lena was already there, all beige silk and fake remorse. My son, Michael, sat beside her, eyes down, guilt written where pride used to live. I carried one thing, a tan folder labeled proof. That folder was my sword. Case number 4732, the bailiff announced. Price versus Carter. The words echoed through the courtroom like a funeral bell. But I wasn't grieving, I was resurrecting. Judge Simmons, tall, gray-haired, tired from too many lies, looked at me over her glasses. Mrs. Price, are you representing yourself? No, Your Honor. Attorney Washington is here on my behalf. May stood smooth as jazz. Good morning, Your Honor. We're ready to proceed. Lena leaned in to whisper something to Michael. He didn't respond. His hands were clenched, wedding ring gleaming under the light like irony itself. May started slow, measured. Your Honor, this is a case about trust, misplaced, misused, and monetized. That line landed heavy. People in the back rows sat up. Mrs. Price's family heirloom, a ring passed down through 4 generations, was stolen, altered, and falsely claimed as another woman's property. There is evidence of unauthorized access, intimidation, and deceit. Lena shifted in her seat. Then May clicked a button, and on the screen appeared the footage, grainy but clear, of Lena and Michael entering my shed with a flashlight. The whole room gasped. May said calm as thunder before a downpour, "Exhibit A." Lena's lawyer jumped up. "Your Honor, that video violates privacy." Judge Simmons raised a hand. "Sit down, Mr. Willis. This is her property. Continue, Ms. Washington." May nodded. "Yes, ma'am. And as you'll see, they weren't just trespassing. They were tampering." She flipped the next slide. The boutique invoice from Eleanor's, the resizing receipt, the engraving photo. It all stacked like dominoes. One truth knocking down another lie. Then May stepped back and said, "Mrs. Price, please take the stand." The bailiff swore me in. Bible in hand, I said the only promise that ever mattered. The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God. I looked at the judge, not the audience. My mother gave me that ring the night before she died. She said, "Don't give it to no one who wears it for show. Give it to a woman who can pray in it." I paused, let the silence breathe. "Your Honor, I didn't give that ring away. It was taken, and not by strangers, by family." I turned to my son. He looked small, like he was shrinking under the weight of what he'd done. "I raised that boy on faith and fried chicken," I said softly. "Never thought I'd have to raise him on justice." The judge's pen stopped moving. That's when I knew the truth had landed. Lena stood suddenly. "Your Honor, this woman's trying to ruin my marriage. That ring was a gift from Michael. He said—" I cut her off without raising my voice. Lies sound louder when they get nervous. The courtroom laughed, quiet but real. Even the judge's mouth twitched. "Mrs. Carter," the judge said sharply, "sit down." Then May dropped the final piece. "Your Honor, we have one more exhibit, a recorded call from the defendant to Mrs. Price, made shortly after the incident." She pressed play. Lena's voice filled the room. "You're ruining your son's life. You think this makes you holy?" Then my voice calm as sunrise. "You can't ruin what truth built. You can only delay what's coming." That line echoed. Somebody in the back whispered, "Amen." Judge Simmons leaned back, eyes closed for a moment like she was listening to something older than law. Then she spoke. "I've seen a lot of family disputes in this courtroom, but I can count on one. Hand the number rooted in this much betrayal. Mrs. Price, your evidence is clear. The heirloom is legally yours. The defendants will return the property immediately." Lena gasped. Michael bowed his head. The judge wasn't done. "As for trespassing and document forgery, I'll refer these to the district attorney for review." The gavel hit wood like a thunderclap. Court adjourned. And just like that, the lie died in public. As people stood, some clapped quietly. Not because they knew me, but because they knew that kind of pain. May hugged me. "You did it, Helen." "No, baby," I said softly. Truth did. Lena rushed past me toward the exit, sunglasses on, pride cracked in half. Michael lingered, trembling. He opened his mouth, but no words came. Finally, he said, "Mama, I'm sorry." I touched his cheek, the same way I did when he was 5. "Sorry don't fix everything, baby, but it's a start." He nodded, tears in his eyes. "Can I come home?" "Not yet," I whispered. "Home's gotta heal first." That night, when I got back, I placed Mama's ring on the kitchen table. It gleamed under the lamplight. Not new, not perfect, but redeemed. And for the first time in months, the house didn't feel empty. It felt earned. I lit a candle beside it, whispered to the air, "They fed me lies, but I fed them consequences." Then I opened my notebook. Under stage 5, judgment, I wrote one line. The truth ain't revenge, it's resurrection. The next morning came quiet. No thunder, no calls, just the hum of peace returning to a house that had been hungry for it. Sunlight hit the table just right. Warm, slow, soft. Mama's ring caught that light like it remembered where it belonged. I poured my coffee, black and steady, the way I liked my victories. Simple, earned, and too hot for the untruthful to sip. For the first time in months, my chest didn't ache. It breathed. By noon, the town had already heard. You know how small towns are. Word travels faster than regret. At the grocery store, eyes followed me down the aisle. Some smiled, some whispered, and some, the same ones who'd called me dramatic, couldn't look me in the face. But I smiled anyway, because dignity don't need applause. It walks quiet and leaves echo. Mrs. Jenkins from the bakery leaned over the counter and whispered, "Heard you gave him a sermon in court, Miss Helen." I laughed, soft. "Didn't even raise my voice, baby. Just brought receipts." She grinned. "That's the best kind of sermon." When I got home, I found a small envelope in the mailbox. No name, no return address. Inside was a folded letter, the handwriting, shaky, familiar. "Mama, I don't expect forgiveness yet, but I want to earn it. I didn't know how far things had gone till I was too deep in lies to breathe. I see now what I lost trying to make her happy. I want to make it right. Love, Michael." The paper smelled faintly of his cologne, that same mix of cedar and pride he used to drown in when he was 23. I folded the letter slow, placed it inside my Bible between Psalms 37 and 91, right between trust and protection, because forgiveness ain't an open door. It's a window you crack just enough for light to test the air. 2 weeks later, he came by, alone this time. No Lena, no perfume, no performance. When I opened the door, he stood there holding a small velvet box. "Mama," he said quietly. "I got it cleaned, the right way this time." He opened the box. Mama's ring glowed like a heartbeat under the porch light. I didn't say a word, just nodded, took it, and slipped it onto my finger. It fit the same, like forgiveness, tight at first, then right where it should be. He sat down at my kitchen table, same spot where I'd once taught him how to write his name. And for a while, we didn't talk. Just let the silence do what words couldn't. Finally, he said, "I left her. I didn't ask why, didn't need to. When a man's eyes finally hold regret, the reason's already written." "You coming back to church?" I asked. He smiled faintly. "If you're sitting in the front pew." "I always am," I said. That Sunday, he did come, walked in with his head high but humble, like a man learning how to walk again. People turned, whispering, not cruelly this time, but curious, and I let them look, because every resurrection deserves witnesses. When the choir sang "Blessed Assurance," he reached over, held my hand. His palm was rough, but his grip was real. And for the first time since that phone call, "You won't be needed at the wedding," I felt whole again. After church, Pastor Green said, "The devil thought he wrote your story, Sister Helen, but you took the pen back." I smiled. He should have known better. My mama taught me how to spell redemption. That night, I sat on the porch with my notebook again, wrote slow, deliberate, Stage 6, peace. Under it, they thought silence meant surrender. It meant strategy. And under that, one more line. Forgiveness ain't letting go. It's letting God finish the ending. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of jasmine from my neighbor's yard. I closed my eyes and let it wash over me. The same air that once carried betrayal now carried blessing. Somewhere, a gospel station played, "His eye is on the sparrow." And I swear I heard Mama hum along. The phone buzzed, a text from Sister Evelyn. "Your story gave half this church courage, Helen. They call it the ring sermon. You should tell it proper one day." I smiled. Maybe I would, but for now, peace was enough. Before heading inside, I looked down at my hand. At that ring. It caught the porch light just so, golden and quiet, and I whispered to the night, "This ring don't just mark what I inherited. It marks what I survived." I closed my notebook, wrote 3 final words under peace. Stage 7, legacy. Then I leaned back in my chair, eyes half closed, and let the world exhale with me. Because, baby, when justice comes home, it don't knock loud. It hums like a gospel through the walls. Time has a way of softening even the hardest truths, but it don't erase them. It just folds them neatly and tucks them into the drawers of memory. It's been 6 months since that courtroom day, 6 months since Mama's ring came home, and silence finally sounded like peace again. But peace ain't quiet. It hums, like a gospel tune in the background of every day, reminding you what survived the fire. The garden behind my house bloomed early that spring. Too early for reason, just right for redemption. Collard greens full and dark, hydrangeas wide as faces, sunlight like forgiveness dripping from heaven itself. I'd be out there every morning in my straw hat watering the same soil my husband once turned with his hands. The ground still remembers good men, baby, even if the world forgets them. Sometimes Michael stops by after work, brings groceries, sometimes just stories. He's quieter now, gentler. Like a man learning to breathe after holding guilt too long. He'll sit on the porch steps, sip his coffee, and say, "Mama, I still hear your voice from court that day. You never yelled, but every word hit like truth was testifying for itself." I smile. "That's 'cause truth don't need volume, baby, just clarity." He nods slow, eyes on the horizon, then says the same thing he says every visit now. "I'm still learning, Ma." And I tell him the same thing every time. "Good, just make sure the lesson's permanent." The church gave me a new title last month. Not deaconess, not treasurer. They call me Mother Helen, like I've been promoted by experience. Folks stop by my pew before service. Women with tired eyes, men with heavy hearts, whispering stories they don't tell nobody else. My daughter won't speak to me. My son's wife treats me like I'm a ghost. My family don't remember who built this house. And I listen, because I know that sound, that crack in a voice when love's been used like currency. Sometimes I don't even give advice. I just look them in the eyes and say, "Baby, document everything, then pray." Half the time, that's all the healing folks need. Permission to hold on to proof and peace at the same time. A local reporter came by a few weeks ago. Said the courthouse clerk told her my case was one of the cleanest wins she'd ever seen. She asked if she could do a feature for the paper. I said, "You can write what you want, baby, but make sure you tell it right." This wasn't a story about a stolen ring. It was about a woman remembering she was never disposable. She smiled, eyes bright. "You mind if I call it the ring sermon?" I laughed. "Call it whatever you want. Just make sure my mama gets a mention. She the one who preached it first." Later that week, Pastor Green had me speak at Women's Night. They dimmed the lights, handed me the microphone, and for a second the crowd disappeared. It was just me and that quiet voice inside that said, "Tell it like truth owes you nothing." So I did. I told them how betrayal don't kill you. It just rearranges your faith. How forgiveness ain't about them. It's about clearing space for peace to sit down. How the same hands that raised children can raise evidence. And how sometimes God's greatest miracles come stamped and notarized. By the end, half the room was crying, the other half was standing. And I ended it with the same line I told myself that night after the call. They wanted my silence, so I gave them a sermon. The crowd shouted amen so loud it rattled the windows. Afterward, a young woman came up to me. Couldn't have been more than 23. She said, "Miss Helen, I thought revenge was the only way to get free, but you showed me there's power in patience." I touched her hand, smiled. "Baby, patience is revenge with manners." She laughed through her tears, and I knew right then, this story wasn't mine anymore. It belonged to every woman who'd ever been cut out of a picture she helped frame. That night, when I got home, I sat by the window looking out at the streetlights flickering like candles in a long prayer. I thought about Mama, about my son, about every woman who's ever been told she won't be needed. And I whispered, they said I wasn't needed, but I was necessary. On the table beside me, the notebook sat open to its last page. The ink shimmered under the lamp as I wrote, Stage 7, Legacy Fulfilled. The ring came home. The truth stood tall. The sun returned. The lesson remained. Then I closed the book, kissed the cover, and smiled. Because sometimes closure ain't a door closing. It's a woman sitting in her own peace, knowing she earned every breath of it. Outside, the wind rustled the hydrangeas. Inside, the house hummed with quiet joy. And somewhere between both, between heaven and healing, I heard Mama's voice again. "Still standin', baby?" I smiled through a tear. "Still standin', Mama." Morning light crept through the blinds slow, like grace easing its way back into my life. I sat at the same kitchen table where it all started. Same cup, same chair, same view. But everything in me was different. The air didn't carry tension anymore. It carried testimony. Because peace, baby, don't come easy. It comes after you've walked through the kind of silence that tries to bury you. And I'd walked through it barefoot. Every splinter of betrayal, every shard of pride. Now all that pain had turned into proof that God still keeps His promises. I flipped open Mama's Bible again, the same one that used to sit under her sewing kit, pages curled, edges worn thin like it had been through storms of its own. Her handwriting in the margins was fading, but I could still read one note beside Psalm 126:5. They that sow in tears shall reap in joy. I touched the words with my finger, and I realized this house, this quiet, this peace, this was my harvest. A knock came at the door. When I opened it, little Naomi, my granddaughter, stood there holding a paper bag and a grin too big for her face. "Grandma, Daddy said we're making breakfast together." I laughed. "We are now." She ran straight to the kitchen, hopping up on a chair like she owned the place. "Can I wear your apron?" "You sure can, baby, but don't spill the grits. They bite back." She giggled, that sweet sound only children and redemption can make. As we cooked, she pointed at my ring. "Daddy said that's Great-Grandma Ruth's ring." "That's right," I said. "Do you know why I wear it?" She shook her head. "Because sometimes, baby, the things people try to steal from you are the very things that prove who you are." She frowned like she was trying to understand it, then smiled. "I'll remember that." And I believed her, because wisdom don't always need age, just good soil to land in. After breakfast, Michael joined us on the porch. We ate slow, talking about nothing and everything, the way healed families do when the hurt's still there, but don't rule the room anymore. He watched Naomi play in the yard, then said softly, "I still can't believe you forgave me." I looked at him, really looked. The boy I raised, the man I almost lost. And I said, "Forgiveness ain't forgetting, baby. It's remembering without the weight." He nodded, eyes glistening. Then he said something that almost broke me. "You were never the one not needed, Mama. You were the reason we survived." And just like that, 6 months of ache turned into air. That evening, I sat back at the same table where the first lie was told, where I once cried into a cup of cold coffee, wondering how my own blood could cut me so deep. Now that same space felt like holy ground, like a wound that had turned into a well. The walls still held the echoes. "You won't be needed at the wedding." But now, when I heard it, I smiled, because baby, I realized something. They were right. I wasn't needed. I was destined. I took out my notebook one last time, turned to the final blank page. The ink flowed easy, like it had been waiting for this ending. Stage 8, the echo. They said I wasn't needed, but I became necessary. They stole a ring, but I reclaimed a legacy. They tried to silence me, so I gave them a sermon. I let the pen rest for a second, then wrote my last line in all caps. Slow, deliberate, eternal. This was Aunt Helen. Still standing, still loving, still learning.